Some stories you just can't make up. They're just too wild, too dramatic, too completely unbelievable. This is one of them. It's a story about an empire on the very brink of collapse, teetering on a knife's edge between glory and total disaster. Rome, the greatest city in the world, was holding its breath. Its people were desperate, praying for a hero, for anyone who could pull them back from the abyss. They had endured mad emperors and brutal civil wars. They had seen their city burn and their treasury emptied. Hope was a luxury they could no longer afford. And then, from the smoke and chaos, a man stepped forward. His name was Titus, and honestly, nobody saw him coming. He wasn't the obvious choice. He had a reputation, sure, the reputation of a hardened soldier, a general who had crushed a bitter rebellion with overwhelming force. Some whispered he was his father's enforcer, a man of ruthless efficiency, rather than a leader of the people. They expected more of the same iron-fisted rule. They expected a tyrant in the making, another shadow to fall across the 7 hills. But Titus was about to do something truly astonishing. He was about to shatter every single expectation. This military man, this conqueror of foreign lands, would not rule with the sword. Instead, he would rule with something far more powerful: his heart. He would become a new kind of emperor, one Rome had never seen before. He would face down some of the most catastrophic disasters in history, not with an iron fist, but with an open hand. His story is not just about power or conquest. It's about how one man's character could change the destiny of millions. So forget everything you think you know about Roman emperors. Forget the madness, the cruelty, the endless plotting. Titus's tale is different. It's a story of shocking generosity, of incredible courage, and of a leader who earned the title Delight of Mankind. His reign was tragically short, a fleeting moment of brightness in a dark and violent age. But the light he cast was so brilliant that it has never truly faded. This is the story of how Emperor Titus, the unlikely hero, changed Rome forever. You are not going to believe what he did. To understand the miracle of Titus, you first have to understand the world he inherited. It was a world quite literally on fire. Rome in the 1st century AD was a powder keg with a very short fuse. The once stable Julio-Claudian dynasty had ended in a blaze of insanity and self-destruction with Emperor Nero. What followed was pure mayhem. The year 69 AD became known as the Year of the 4 Emperors. General after general marched on Rome. They seized power and were promptly murdered by the next guy. A brutal, bloody merry-go-round of ambition and death. The empire was tearing itself apart at the seams. Armies meant to defend the frontiers were instead marching on each other, slaughtering fellow Romans for a throne that seemed cursed. The treasury was bankrupt, plundered by Nero's excesses, plundered by the endless civil wars. The people of Rome were exhausted and terrified. They watched leaders act like paranoid warlords. They feared the empire might crumble into dust. This wasn't just a political crisis, it was existential. Was this the end of the Roman dream? Out of the anarchy, Vespasian restored order. He was Titus's father. He clawed his way to the top through grit and military genius. But the scars of civil war ran deep. The city was damaged, the people were distrustful, the future was uncertain. Into this fragile, broken Rome stepped Titus. He had seen the worst on the battlefield, and in the backstabbing halls of Roman politics. The challenges ahead were almost impossible. Then the universe piled on more disaster. Natural catastrophes lurked over the horizon. A volcano would erupt. A great fire would consume the capital. A deadly plague would sweep the population. A perfect storm of calamity. The trial by fire that awaited Titus. His empire was not just broken, it was about to be battered by forces beyond any man's control. Titus Flavius Vespasianus wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Not really. His family, the Flavians, were what you'd call new money in ancient Rome. They weren't part of the ancient snooty aristocracy that had run the show for centuries. His grandfather had been a humble tax collector, a job about as popular then as it is now. His father, Vespasian, was the one who really changed their fortunes. He was a tough, gritty soldier who had climbed the greasy pole of Roman politics through sheer determination and a knack for winning battles. So, while Titus grew up around power, he knew it wasn't a birthright. It had to be earned every single day with sweat and blood. This upbringing gave him a different perspective. He didn't have the arrogance of the old noble families who thought the world owed them everything. Instead, he grew up watching his father work tirelessly, navigating treacherous political waters and leading legions in far-flung, muddy corners of the empire. Titus learned from a young age that respect wasn't given, it was commanded. He saw that true leadership wasn't about fancy titles or inherited wealth. It was about competence, about being the man who could get the job done when everything was falling apart. This was the most important lesson of his youth, and it would define him for the rest of his life. He was an exceptional student, not just in the classroom, but in the school of hard knocks. He learned to ride a horse before he could properly read a scroll. He could handle a sword and a javelin with the skill of a seasoned legionary, while other boys his age were still learning poetry. His father, Vespasian, made sure of it. He knew that for a Flavian to survive, let alone thrive, his sons had to be tougher, smarter, and more capable than anyone else. Titus absorbed it all. He had a brilliant mind for military strategy and a natural charisma that drew people to him. He was shaping up to be the ultimate Roman asset, a soldier with a brain. And here's a brilliant little detail. Titus actually grew up in the imperial court. He was a childhood friend of Britannicus, the son of the Emperor Claudius. This meant he saw the glittering, dangerous world of the palace from the inside. He saw the plots, the paranoia, and the poison. He even claimed he was present the night Britannicus was poisoned, and that he tasted the fatal drink himself, suffering a brief illness. Whether it's true or not, the story tells you everything. He was right there, at the heart of the storm, learning from a very young age that power was a deadly game. This wasn't just an education, it was a masterclass in survival. A young man with Titus's ambition and training couldn't be kept in Rome for long. The city was a cage. The real action, the real path to glory, was on the frontiers of the empire. So, as soon as he was old enough, Titus joined the army. This wasn't some cushy desk job for a well-connected boy. He was sent to the tough provinces, to the sharp end of the Roman spear. His first major postings were in Germania and Britannia. These weren't quiet, peaceful places. They were wild, hostile lands, full of fierce tribes who hated the Romans and were very, very good at fighting them in the mud and rain. It was here, in the damp forests of Germania and the misty hills of Britannia, that Titus got his first real taste of war. He served as a military tribune, a junior officer, but he didn't act like one. He wasn't hiding in his tent, giving orders from a safe distance. He was on the front lines, fighting shoulder to shoulder with the common legionaries. He shared their rations, slept in the same miserable conditions and faced the same dangers. This was incredibly unusual for a man of his standing. And the soldiers, the hardened grunts of the Roman army, they noticed. They respected him for it. He wasn't just an officer, he was one of them. His reputation for bravery spread like wildfire. There are stories of him leading daring cavalry charges, plunging deep into enemy lines to rescue comrades who were surrounded. One famous account tells of a time his unit was ambushed, and he saved the day by rallying the men and leading a ferocious counterattack that turned a certain defeat into a stunning victory. He wasn't reckless, but he was fearless. He understood that in the chaos of battle, men don't follow a name or a rank. They follow the man who is willing to risk everything right alongside them. Titus proved time and time again that he was that man. This period was crucial. It did more than just build his military resume. It forged a powerful bond between Titus and the Roman army. These soldiers would remember the young officer who fought with them, who bled with them, and who treated them with respect. They developed an unshakable loyalty to him. This loyalty would become one of his greatest assets later in life. When his father made his bid for the imperial throne, the legions didn't just support Vespasian, the seasoned general. They also supported Titus, the young wolf they had seen prove his courage on the battlefield. This wasn't just a career move. It was the forging of a weapon. During his time in the army, Titus wasn't just collecting battle scars. Titus wasn't just collecting commendations. He was also building relationships, forging alliances that would last a lifetime. Frontiers taught you who you'd trust with your life. One of his fellow officers was a brilliant historian, Tacitus. Another was Pliny the Elder, a polymath and commander. These men became friends, confidants, a band of brothers united by service to Rome. This network was incredibly important. In Rome, who you knew often mattered as much as what you could do. Titus was building a team of the empire's most capable men. They admired his leadership, his courage, his sharp mind. They saw not just a soldier, but a potential leader of men, someone who could command an army and an empire. This circle offered counsel and support across his career. He wasn't a lone wolf. He led a formidable pack. After tours in the north, Titus returned to Rome. He didn't rest on his laurels. He swapped military armor for a lawyer's toga and began practicing law. It showed he was more than a brute soldier. He understood Roman law and politics. He served as quaestor, learning how the state was run. He methodically built the perfect Roman resume: war hero, legal eagle, political insider. He made himself indispensable, able to conquer enemies and govern a city. This period shows a man with a plan. He wasn't drifting between jobs. Every step was calculated to build experience and reputation. He was young, charismatic, incredibly competent. The old nobility watched him with admiration and fear. The son of a tax collector outshone their sons. He proved talent and hard work could beat ancient lineage. Titus was no longer just Vespasian's son. He was a rising star, a force to be reckoned with. His greatest test was just around the corner. While Titus was making a name for himself, a storm was gathering on the eastern edge of the empire. In the province of Judea, resentment against Roman rule had been simmering for decades. It was a clash of cultures, of gods, and of wills. The Romans saw it as just another troublesome province. But for the Jewish people, it was their holy land. Tensions finally boiled over into open rebellion. This wasn't some minor skirmish. It was a full-blown war fueled by prophecies and a burning desire for freedom. The Jewish rebels were fierce, determined, and fighting on their home turf. They believed God was on their side. They inflicted a stunning defeat on the local Roman legion, wiping it out. Rome was shocked, humiliated. An entire legion destroyed, a massive blow to Roman prestige. Emperor Nero knew this could not stand. He needed his best man on the job, Vespasian. Vespasian went to Judea and he brought his son. Titus, now a seasoned commander, was given control of his own legion. The young wolf was about to be unleashed. This was no longer a training exercise in the forests of Germania. This was the big league, a war of extermination. The enemy would rather die than surrender. The campaign that followed was a masterclass in Roman military might. Vespasian and Titus didn't just rush to Jerusalem. They were methodical. They were relentless. They moved through the province, town by town, fortress by fortress, crushing all opposition. It was a slow, grinding, brutal process. Titus was always at the forefront of the action. He was no longer just a brave officer. He was a brilliant general. He personally directed sieges and led assaults. He was wounded, a stone to his left shoulder, but it only seemed to fuel his determination. He earned respect and fear. This war shaped Titus. He saw incredible bravery on both sides and unimaginable cruelty. He learned some conflicts couldn't be won with negotiation or compromise. This was a war of total annihilation. As the Romans tightened their grip on Judea, all that remained was Jerusalem. Jerusalem, heavily fortified, packed with desperate defenders ready to fight to the last man. Then news from Rome. Nero was dead. The empire was in chaos. Vespasian made his bid for the throne and returned to Rome. He left one man to finish the job. He left his son Titus in charge. The fate of Jerusalem was now in his hands.